Rain on the East Coast is finally slowing down, and now waterlogged states are starting to clean up after those severe storms slammed the region yesterday. The torrential rain triggered flood alerts for millions from Virginia to Connecticut. At least 15,000 people across the tri-state area still had no power as of early this morning. The worst of the weather hit New York right during the afternoon rush, flooding the city's subway system and causing chaos on the roads. Commuters were caught clinging to subway gates as they tried to avoid the water that was just bursting from the walls. In Queens, traffic came to a standstill. Drivers had to be rescued from several cars and a semi-truck that all got stuck on the Clearview Expressway. Well, in Mount Airy, Maryland, a 13-year-old boy who was playing outside died after a flash flood swept him into a drainage pipe. Our Angie Lastman is tracking the storm. First, NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin is in New York with the latest.
Hey there, Joe. Crews worked all night to get the trains back up and running here in the Queens after 3 to 4 inches of rain fell in just 1 hour, flooding the tracks. Elsewhere in Queens, cars and even a semi-truck were submerged. Another driver was seen sitting on top of his submerged vehicle, part of the commuter chaos that was yesterday evening in the New York area. Further south, first responders were conducting water rescues in Maryland. Harrowing video showing them wading through knee-high water, carrying 2 children to safety. This storm was deadly. West of Baltimore, fire officials say a boy died after floodwaters swept him into a storm drain. The nasty weather also causing ground stops, flight delays, and cancellations at airports across the region. And down in Florida, weather forced NASA and SpaceX to postpone that Crew 11 launch to the International Space Station. They called it off just seconds before liftoff. They plan to try again today. Joe.
All right, Aaron, thank you. Storms are shifting south this morning. Well, this weekend, looks beautiful for us here in the Northeast. Let's get a check on your morning news now. Weather with meteorologist Angie Lastman. Angie, good morning.
Hi, Joe. Good morning to you. You asked and I delivered. You wanted the cooler weather. We're going to start to see that settle in, and even the dry conditions are going to work in to parts of the Northeast here for the whole area by the time we get into the weekend and even later today. You'll notice most of the rain is already out of the picture. It's been still a little bit of a soggy morning for places like Hartford and Boston, those New England areas that have still been dealing with the rain. They won't see that for much longer. A couple of showers a little farther to the south, but again, most of this rain working offshore as that front pulls away to the north. Now, down to the south, you'll notice that it's still kind of draped across the southeast, and that's exactly where we're going to see some showers and thunderstorms ignite as the afternoon goes on. Some of those potentially have heavy downpours with them, and that means that we'll once again be looking at the flooding concern just over parts of the southeast instead here as we get even into the weekend. This is a look at Saturday, still unsettled. Atlanta, Jacksonville, Charleston, that's where we'll see likely some of those showers and thunderstorms, and that extends all the way to Texas as well. One thing to note, I said those heavy downpours will be possible, and we could see anywhere from 1 inch to 3 inches of rain by the time the weekend is over across this region. Specifically today, this is the area we're most concerned for flash flooding. We've got a whole lot of moisture in the atmosphere. We saw that delivered yesterday with all that instability and plenty of moisture to tap into across the Northeast, and this isn't much different. We'll still have that potential to see some really impressive rainfall rates of 2 inches per hour or higher. So if you live in the Asheville, Charlotte, Wilmington, Charleston, Columbia area, you have a good chance of seeing that. But even extending out to Raleigh and Atlanta, as well as Montgomery, the potential for flash flooding is there. Meanwhile, that cold front has offered up a little bit of relief for everybody, basically, but the southeast. All that heat that we were seeing for the Great Lakes, the Northeast, even the Ohio Valley, that's long gone. Instead, we're dealing with those heat alerts still in place across the southeast, but 28 million people included in that. The cooler and more refreshing conditions, they are centered up north. So essentially 70s for Omaha, Minneapolis, Chicago, Cleveland, out to the East Coast as well, Philadelphia, Boston. You're only going to get to 70 degrees today. It's going to feel a whole lot cooler than it should for this time of year, but some welcome relief from the heat and the humidity across that region. Notice as we head into the weekend, still into the 90s across Texas and the Gulf Coast and down through Florida. But everywhere else, really kind of nice, comfortable conditions. We'll start to see the heat build back in by the time we get into the early parts of next week, Joe. But we have some delightful weather on the way for the weekend for folks in the Northeast. So there you go. My gift to you.
Focus on that right now.
Yes, we are.
All right, Angie, thank you so much.
You got it.
Now, many questions still surround the flash floods last month that killed so many people in Texas's Hill Country. and answers are tough to come by. At an emotional hearing yesterday, people shared heartbreaking stories of loss as state officials tried to hold local emergency management leaders accountable. NBC News correspondent Ryan Chandler was at that meeting.
For so many people who lost loved ones here in Kerr County, their grief has turned to anger, demanding answers for why local officials seemingly did not warn early enough to potentially save more lives.
The river that we've loved so much killed them. I'm sorry.
We climbed into cedar trees, and I had to help my 66-year-old mom.
In Kerrville, grief and anger boiling over at a hearing on the response to the catastrophic flooding on July 4th. State officials grilling local leaders, pointing out one top county official was out of town.
Everyone was here that day working their ass off, and you were nowhere to be found.
While two other key officials admitted they were asleep when the floodwaters began to rapidly rise, including the Kerr County Emergency Coordinator, who said he was sick that week.
I was awakened around 5:30 a.m. on July the 4th by my wife, following a call from the City of Kerrville EMC, Jeremy Hughes, requesting that I mobilize. I reported immediately to the sheriff's office.
Should he keep his job?
Those decisions we made at the local level. What I can tell you is somebody has to have the authority that's present in the moment to basically call a code red.
More than 130 people lost their lives. And you knew a lot of people who died.
27.
For Bud Bolton, the loss is still so raw.
It's just stories after stories after stories after stories of my friends telling me we lost my son-in-law, we can't find my daughter.
Bud's son Ashton told us he found a girl's body, retrieving it in a kayak. That must stick with you.
Absolutely. Sticks with me when I close my eyes and lay my head down at night.
They say the government response was too little, too late.
Nothing was done. Nothing was done. They chose not to do it. Chose not to do it. It all comes back to that right there.
Lawmakers have a lot of proposals to sift through to potentially pass legislation that could prevent or mitigate disasters like this in the future. But they have a short window to do so, less than 3 weeks remaining in this special session, with a lot more still on the agenda. In Kerrville, I'm Ryan Chandler. Back to you.
All right, Ryan, thank you. The Trump administration has unveiled new sweeping tariffs on dozens of trading partners from around the world. Now, today is President Trump's self-imposed deadline for trade deals. For those nations that didn't make a deal, the president signed an executive order last night that would impose new tariffs ranging anywhere from 10 to 50% beginning next Thursday. That's August 7th. The president also signed a sweeping executive order yesterday, officially locking in agreements that were made with important trading partners, including Japan, the United Kingdom, and the European Union. Also, major renovations are set to soon begin at the White House. Construction on a new 90,000 square foot ballroom will get underway next month. The makeover comes with a price tag of $200 million. NBC News White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard joins us now from Washington with the latest. Vaughn, good morning. So let's start with that ballroom project right there. It's going to get underway in September. It's the biggest transformation the White House will have seen since the Truman administration. That was more than a century ago. Why now, and why a ballroom?
The president, Joe, has tinkered over the last 6 months with the White House. If you look at the Oval Office, for example, you see a great amount of gold decorum that has been added to picture frames and around the fireplace. And you saw him pave over the grass section of the Rose Garden to create a patio. But now this $200 million proposal would effectively replace East Wing offices, a good number of them used by the First Lady's office typically, and instead replace it with this large ballroom, essentially being able to quadruple the capacity that the ballrooms in the White House are able to currently hold. Of course, there's a lot of questions about this. The president suggesting to NBC News that private donors, as well as himself, would fund this $200 million reconstruction that should be completed by the end of his first term. At least one Democratic lawmaker on Capitol Hill said they would like to have a better understanding of who would exactly be putting forward that funding here. But this is a president who has added 2 large flagpoles here at the White House grounds as well. And so clearly seeking to leave his mark as the one-time real estate developer turned president.
Show the super PAC affiliated with President Trump raised $177 million, in the first half of this year. So Who's donating to that? And how significant is this, especially given that he is a term-limited president by the Constitution?
Right, Joe. That's accurate, because typically there's new operations that sort of get stood up upon one president of a major party finishing his time in office. And instead, it is the current sitting president, a bank account for that super PAC sits at about $200 million. And just $4 million was spent these last 6 months, meaning that they're going to be a major player in not only the midterm elections, but also potentially presidential elections, and that this president clearly has no interest in leaving the political scene, at least in terms of financial influence. In terms of some of those donors, there was the mother of one individual who the president pardoned in April, just 4 weeks after she made a significant donation. There's also a major stakeholder in a firm that has a major stake in TikTok that was the largest donor of $16 million here. And so we have seen often super PACs be used to gain some favorable influence within the White House here. And this, at least at the bare minimum, shows that the president is going to continue to be a major political factor here in the years ahead.
Vaughn, let's talk about tariffs. The deadline for imposing them has been a moving target for the administration for months now. So where do things stand now that we've hit that deadline?
Right. Today is August 1st, and already 2 different times these major tariffs were delayed. And we should note that there are some delays on others, like China, for example, is at least till now, August 12th. The White House is suggesting they will not raise these, what they're calling reciprocal tariffs on China. But also on Mexico yesterday, the president announcing that the 20% tariff currently on Mexico will remain in place, but it will not go up to the 30% that they initially threatened. At the same time, our neighbors to the north in Canada, the president implementing a 35% tariff today. Over in Switzerland, a 39% tariff. These are, let's be clear, massive tariffs that are being implemented on some countries. The president, though, also yesterday announcing an executive order in which he was formalizing some trade agreements with Japan, South Korea, with the Philippines. These were trade agreements. Some of the details still need to be hashed out. But there's a great many countries that are staring down significant tariffs to get their goods into the United States. And the president opened the door to further negotiations in the weeks ahead here. But there's still a lot of questions about how this exactly will impact the American economy in the months ahead.
All right, Vaughn, thank you so much. Let's dig into more on these tariffs with NBC News senior policy reporter Shannon Pettypiece. All right, so we finally have, I guess, some level of clarity, perhaps more than we've had in a few months about this. So what are these tariffs as they stand right now going to mean for America's economy and for the global economy?
Well, I mean, I just do want to add a little caveat on there, building on what Vaughn was saying, because we have had so many times where we feel like we're up against the ledge of these tariffs taking effect. They were supposed to take effect in April, then in July. Then we thought the deadline was August 1st. Now it's August 7th. With a caveat that if you get your goods on the water by August 7th, you don't have to pay them until October. So I think there's still some flexibility here, even though, to your point, we do have some more clarity. It's probably going to be a bit of a slow rolling impact that consumers start to see on the economy because, you know, if it's on the water, it doesn't have to pay until a certain point. Businesses have a little bit of flexibility here about whether they can sort of delay, you know, different delay tactics. So I think there's going to be a slow roll, but ultimately we're looking at a tariff rate already that is the highest since the 1930s, which some economists attribute to triggering the Great Depression back then. And so companies now are going to be faced with billions of dollars in added tariff costs if these go into effect, that they're going to figure out whether they are going to absorb those by cutting costs elsewhere or by raising prices for what they charge consumers.
For consumers, what is this likely going to mean? Are there certain items that we can pretty much look at and say, these are going to be more expensive?
I mean, it's going to be really across the board. Everything that's imported into the U.S. will at least have a base tariff of 10% under this current tariff policy. Some countries, it's going to be as high as 40%. So everything from iPhones, electronics, clothing, food and agriculture goods, coffee, vanilla from Madagascar, everything you can imagine being imported in this country. And so many of those things either can't be produced here because we don't have the agricultural capacity to do that, or it could take years to bring production here. So in the meantime, we're already seeing prices increase as a result of the existing tariffs, and companies say there's going to just be no way to avoid increasing prices going forward.
What are we seeing in global markets right now, and also just the U.S. futures here?
Yeah, the market's down a little bit. Not a huge move. I think so much of this has sort of been built in and anticipated here, and there's a lot of other aspects sort of bolstering the market, like a lot of strong earnings coming out of technology right now, but we are seeing markets down as a reaction to this.
We're expecting the jobs report this morning. When it comes to tariffs, what type of impact do we expect tariffs to have on the jobs market? Maybe not this report this morning, but in the near future.
Yeah, so if companies now have to pay millions of dollars more to import their goods, that cost has to go somewhere. They can try to cut costs, and one of the biggest sources of costs for companies is labor. So that's a potential risk that companies could have to cut back on their labor to try and absorb some of these costs. Or again, they could have to increase prices, and increasing prices, though, could mean consumers buy less, which could mean companies also have to cut costs elsewhere in the form of labor and employment. So that's one of the big concerns we heard from the Federal Reserve going forward. Not only could these tariffs drive inflation, but what could they do to the labor market, and whether companies are going to have to end up cutting back on their workforces because of this.
All right, Shannon Pettypiece, good to have you with us. Thank you so much. The family of Virginia Giuffre is responding to recent comments made by President Trump. Giuffre, who died by suicide earlier this year, was one of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's most vocal accusers. Earlier this week, the president said that she was, quote, stolen from his Mar-a-Lago club decades ago by Epstein. Her family is calling on files related to the Epstein case to be released. News Now anchor Hallie Jackson spoke with her family.
The family of one of Jeffrey Epstein's most vocal accusers speaking out publicly.
She wasn't an object.
They're responding to this moment this week when the president suggested Epstein stole Virginia Giuffre from his Mar-a-Lago club decades ago when she worked there.
He stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us, as you know. None whatsoever.
What went through your mind when you heard that?
I think we were shocked by it. Especially to use the term stolen, because she's not an object, she's a person.
The White House press secretary says President Trump was directly responding to a question posed by a reporter about Ms. Giuffre. He did not bring her up. President Trump has denied any knowledge of Epstein's wrongdoing and said he kicked Epstein out of his club for being a creep.
Did you know why he was taking those young women, including Virginia?
No, I didn't know. I don't know really why. But I said if he's taking anybody from Mar-a-Lago, he's hiring or whatever he's doing. I didn't like it, and we threw him out.
Giuffre, who died by suicide in April, said it was Epstein's convicted accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, who recruited and trafficked her. Her family now urging the administration and the president not to pardon Maxwell.
I think that my sister would have been mortified if she were let out of prison.
I think the word that comes to mind is it would be an abomination.
A senior administration official tells NBC News no leniency is being given or discussed, but President Trump has not publicly ruled it out.
There's more to be said and there's more to be done for these survivors. They deserve justice. We deserve to know.
Sky, will you keep fighting on behalf of your sister, on behalf of other survivors?
Every day.
And that was Hallie Jackson reporting. Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney did not comment, but when previously asked about a pardon, said that Maxwell would welcome any relief. The FAA says it is conducting an investigation into a Delta flight that was so turbulent, 25 people were rushed to the hospital. The plane was bound for Europe, but forced to make an emergency landing in Minneapolis. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the latest.
Minneapolis airport plane spotters streamed the emergency landing live.
Delta 56 was bound for Amsterdam. Schiphol departed Salt Lake City a few hours ago.
Ambulances lined up for dozens of patients after the Delta jumbo jet hit extreme turbulence over Wyoming.
It's a heavy Airbus, and they do have a medical emergency on board.
Photos show the aftermath: food, bottles, backpacks, and service cards. 25 passengers and crew members taken to area hospitals. Leanne Nash, on board with her husband, says everything went flying.
literally without absolutely any warning, we hit what, appears to be like a brick wall.
We really thought that this was going to tear the plane apart. And so for a brief moment, we thought we were going to die.
In a statement, Delta says all 7 crew members who were taken to area hospitals were treated and released. Aviation experts say summer heat can supercharge violent clear air turbulence. Flights over mountain ranges can be especially vulnerable.
If you imagine the airflow over this wing experiencing a sudden updraft, this wing will be pushed up violently and instantaneously, and the airplane will tilt to the left.
Invisible to radar, pilots rely on fellow pilots' radio reports to avoid it, as we saw at the American Airlines Command Center. When you get into bad turbulence, what are your options?
Either rise above it or dip under it. Most of the time, when you're in it, you have to ride through it.
5,000 cases each year, with flight attendants suffering 78% of the injuries. Climate researchers and many aviation experts believe climate change has led to more severe turbulence. It's a good reminder to always wear your seatbelt when you are on a plane. Back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you. We are learning new details about the arrest of a suspect accused of killing a couple who were out hiking with their daughters in Arkansas last weekend. Police say a 28-year-old elementary school teacher admitted to the crime. Police arrested him Wednesday while he was getting a haircut. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock spoke to the mother of one of the suspect's former students and has this report.
Arkansas State Police say around 5 p.m. Wednesday evening, a multi-day manhunt ended when they found the person they were looking for in a barber shop about a half-hour's drive from where this double murder was committed. Police say that the suspect admitted to committing those murders when presented with DNA evidence, but the questions about his background are only beginning. Police say the man responsible for a brutal double murder in Arkansas is an elementary school teacher.
The suspect indicated that he did commit these murders.
After a sweeping 5-day manhunt, Andrew James McGann was captured at a barber shop where the stylist said he declined to sign in.
As I was cutting his hair, I noticed he had very dry scalp and how matted his hair was. And then it just turned out that, it was him.
Within minutes, law enforcement is through your door.
Yes.
The arrest, a mere 25 miles from Devil's Den State Park, where Clinton and Kristen Brink were violently stabbed to death, according to investigators. They believe Clinton was attacked first as his wife fled with their daughters.
We believe that the mother took them to safety and then returned to help her husband.
The girls made it to the park's visitor center.
They advised that their parents were assaulted.
Police say there's no known connection between the family and McGann. Both had recently moved to the area, McGann for a teaching job.
He broke down crying and told me that he had seen some things in class that made him really uncomfortable. But that
Sierra Markham says McGann was her son Jax's 4th grade teacher in Texas. Here he is in the yearbook. It was the first of 4 teaching stops he would make in 4 years. What kind of things did your son see that made him so upset?
So he told me that him and several classmates had noticed Mr. McGann paying extra attention to certain girls in class. When it was recess, he would keep certain girls back for just like one-on-one in the classroom. And when they would come back from recess, he would have the little girl on his lap.
The district says they found no evidence of inappropriate behavior, but did place McGann on administrative leave for classroom management and judgment issues. Police say they haven't determined a motive, while the Brink family says Clinton and Kristen died heroes, protecting their little girls. Other schools that McGann worked for tell NBC News they performed a full background check but found no red flags, though it is notable they also said he either resigned or left for a position out of state, and it's not clear what level of friction, if any, he encountered jumping from school to school.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.